first time in the city of Goche that we've ever had a city manager stakeholder meeting. And the idea came about because there are a lot of questions right now about so many projects that are happening in the city of Goche. And a lot of those have to do with operational issues. And so the mayor and council, in talking about this, we decided, annually, I provide a report to my mayor and council on the status of the city. And after budget, I have a meeting with all city employees where we can get into the nitty-gritty, ask questions, evaluate our successes, make sure that we're replicating them. And so this is really a hybrid of those two meetings. This is not a town hall meeting. We have town hall meetings throughout the year where we engage our citizens and we have a set agenda. We advertise that agenda. We will have town hall meetings for Hickory Hills and for North Goche. And I encourage you to please come to those town hall meetings. This is not a crime prevention or neighborhood watch meeting. And I've asked some of you if you have attended those, and I got yeses from many of you, and I'm so glad to hear that. And if you'd like to know when the next neighborhood watch crime prevention meeting is for your area, I know Chief Eldon will be happy to share that date with you. What this is about is this is a message to our stakeholders. And if you invest in Goche, if you live in Goche, if you're growing a business in Goche, then this is the meeting for you. And so I'm going to start by looking at a meeting on my domestic. Now look, I'm supposed to be here 5 minutes ago, so thankfully I made it. Let me get rid of that. There we go. So, this is a quote I like. The more you can see of the present, the more that you can see of the future. Right now, so many people are asking what is going on in the town center, what's going on in the interstate, what is next, and so we're going to start by talking about our story, where we are today, and I think it's going to become much more clear for everyone where we're going to be in just a short time. We're going to be evaluating our successes in order to replicate them. That's so important. We always evaluate our failures, right? When something goes wrong, we say, what happened? And how can we keep that from ever happening again? But too often we don't stop to evaluate our successes, and that's just as important because you want to know what you did right and how you did it right so that you can replicate that success. More importantly, what we're seeing is that if you don't stop and talk about those successes, they have a tendency to disappear in plain sight. An example of that would be virtually all the storefronts in our town center have undergone a facade improvement. And yet you don't see a lot of discussion about that. That's just one that we're going to be talking about this evening. But it's important to stop and talk about all the investment that's happening right now in the city of Goche so that we're all on the same page about what's happening. We need to know our story. That's important because we have to share our story. You have to share your story because as stakeholders, you want other people to invest in the city of Goche to grow our community. We're going to talk about the power of team, and specifically my directors, for the people to my right and to my left, and then you're going to have an opportunity to engage with them directly, to talk with them about the message this evening, and for them to be able to share with you about what they're doing to implement your plan for growth. So it started like this. Everyone has a story, and because this is my city manager stakeholder meeting, I get to share with you mine. My story starts May 2010 with a big man with broad shoulders and a huge cowboy hat who comes into my office, and I had barely unpacked things, and he sat down across from me and he said, the first thing you need to know about me, I ain't no good. And he had my attention. And he said, the second thing you need to know is that in the city of Goche, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. And I'm sick of it. I'm a contractor, and I can't get anything built in the city of Goche. Nobody will give me a straight answer. And then after we try to build something, then they hit us double whammy, can't get a project built. He started to tell me some stories. And on that day, actually, I was wearing a dress. And since that time, that man has come to ruin many, many pairs of shoes that I had owned. But that was the first. Because I looked at him and said, do you have some time? Let's drive around. Why don't you show me what you're talking about? And I climbed up into his big, muddy rig. And he went and showed me one PVC graveyard after another. And it was a sad picture, I have to tell you. For me, that's investment. That is a dream. That is somebody who hired an engineer and hired an architect and wanted to grow, and something happened. And I wasn't sure what that was, but he painted a picture for me that day. That person was Mike Martin. Anyone know Mike Martin? Straight shooter, ain't he? Right after that, I had another visit from another person who had a similar story. And that person was Mr. Wallace Easley. Anybody know Wallace Easley? Yes. I had visit after visit after visit in the weeks to come. People knocking on my door, people telling me, you got a problem. And the whole time, I'm smiling, I'm excited, I'm energized. You wanna know why? Because we're all the sum of our experiences. And I had just spent the last 6 years in Fort Walton Beach, and when I arrived in Fort Walton Beach, there was a moratorium where they could issue any building permits because they were in violation of state and federal mandates. And for me to get in touch with property owners, I'm trying to contact people in India and in Dubai. I have landowners here in Goche who are in my face saying, you got a problem, you need to do something about it. That is exciting. That means there's people who care. My in-laws retired to Pascagoula the week after Katrina. In fact, to this day, the woman in the top right believes my in-laws are in the witness protection program. And that is Michelle Coates, and she's the planning director for Jackson County. She was one of my first impressions of the city of Goche. My husband is here this evening. My husband, Levi. He is also your neighbor. And we would hear the story about the rebuilding of the coast. My in-laws were so passionate about it. And we would come and visit with them, and their building of a home, and they would talk about Goche, and we would come over and we would visit the Lewis building and visit Old Fields, and they would talk about Goche like it was a riddle wrapped in a puzzle with an enigma on top. You know, what is the deal? Goche's 33 square miles, highest elevation on the coast, between the industrial and tourism hubs in the whole state, and there's not a lot going on over there. And so, I started reading up. Does this look familiar to anyone? I'm getting yeses. That is exciting. Sitting on my bed in Fort Walton Beach, I start looking at this, and it's telling me a story. I'm reading about the visioning after Katrina, and this is this. This is what you did after Katrina. You all came together, and you envisioned what you wanted for your community. And the Mississippi Renewal Forum report, where an influx of funds came in so that you could hold charrettes and town hall meetings and envision what you want. And this is what I read. You want a redeveloped mall into an open air center. You want a Main Street north of the mall where you can have festivals like your Mullet Festival. You want a town commons north of that that's like a central park. You want that anchored by your community college. You want a redeveloped interstate. You want a waterfront. You want a vibrant Shepherd Park. This is all right here, and I'm sitting here reading this story thinking, well, there's got to be something wrong, because that's an incredible place. That's a place I want to live. And then I see that you have already adopted that vision, that great idea, into a comprehensive plan. How many of you have read your comprehensive plan? I like this crowd. So this is your comprehensive plan. In the back of this comprehensive plan is an implementation table. My directors know it well. This is our playbook. This is what we do. This implementation table has now been broken down even further into objectives that are a 5-year strategic plan that's twice a year reviewed by your mayor and council. So this is your comprehensive plan taken directly from your Mississippi Urban Renewal Forum, and here you go, all over again. Town center, about 300 acres. It shows that you want a vibrant town center, waterfront, developed interstate. So I think there's got to be something wrong. It's Mississippi, it's all wet. right? It's wet or the birds own it. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing from Pascagoula, right? So in your comprehensive plan is a map from the Department of Marine Resources. This is not GOCHE's map. This is a map from the Department of Marine Resources. This is a land use suitability map. Everything green is too wet to build.
Lots of green.
And blue is water. So, the darker the red, right, the more compatible for development. Does that surprise you? So what DMR is saying is, yes, you may have to mitigate it, obviously, but your permitting authorities, your Army Corps of Engineers, and DMR are saying, GOCHE, suitable for development. So here's why I've paused to tell you that most of my adult life I have been in school. It is something that I enjoy. Most of my courses are international development. I like to take classes with people who are outside of my fishbowl, which is a term that I use. They're people from all walks of life who are focused in either international development or local community development. In addition to that, my mayor and council, my directors know that I have a little bit of a habit on Fridays where I like to have lunch with someone who I ordinarily would never come into contact with. Somebody from a different walk of life, somebody from outside the city of GOCHE, and somewhere in that conversation I will ask them, tell me something I don't know. And most of the time it's just because I'm tired of the sound of my own voice, and I just like to hear somebody else talking. And you know, when you hear about real hard labor and real problems, like a special education teacher, you walk away going, I don't have any issues. But I always walk away learning something. And my point is this, you can Google this, and no matter how you Google community development, this is what you're going to come up with, some variation of this. And these two pictures are exactly the same, but you're going to come up with some variation. If you are building in Sierra Leone, if you are building in India, if you are building in GOCHE, Mississippi, this is what you're going to look at first day of arrival. You have to have three things in order to have sustainability and in order to be resilient when the Hurricane Katrinas of the world come to be able to build back. You have to have economy, environment, and social community. Said another way, your environment is your land use. If you're underwater, you can't build, right? So you have to have the right land use, the right environment. You have to have community development. Here it says social communities. Said another way, community development, I'm going to break it down and make it real simple, and it's important. Community development is the act of coming together. It's when you plan a block party. Now it might rain that day, and the block party might not ever happen, but you came together and you decided who would make brownies and who would make the casserole and who would bring the drinks, and just by coming together, that's community. And if you do that enough times, then you start to form bonds, right? That's community development. Without community development, you cannot have economic development. Economic development is only growth. Now you can call it business retention, recruitment, expansion, whatever, but the problem is, without community development, when that economic development knocks on your door and somebody applies for a permit, the community doesn't know what they want because they have no sense of identity. And so it's scary because they don't know who they are. And so they push opportunity away. Does that sound familiar? That's what happens in any new community. In any burgeoning community, the first thing you have to do is agree, who are we? And you have to start talking and you have to start engaging so that when that opportunity knocks at your door, you know what you want, you know what you stand for, and you know what you don't want. Quickly, another way. Citizens, local authorities, and your intermediaries. The local authorities, obviously, that's government. We provide a basic service. We are accountable to our citizens. The intermediaries are some of the people that I'm looking at here today. These are your social groups. These are your community developers. These are the ones who have book clubs. These are the ones who have Bible studies. These are the ones who teach community lessons like piano. These are the ones who are coaching baseball. This is our GOCHE Pride group. You cannot have economic development without having engagement from all three. So, getting back to my story, when I arrived on scene in May 2010, people were tired. People were battle weary. Did you know that the city of Gaucher was the fastest growing city on the entire Gulf Coast before Katrina? And I don't mean because of annexation, and I don't mean population, I mean in the number of permits. Some of you here are builders. Did you know that Gaucher was the fastest growing city? It's true. And that's what happened in Gaucher. You have a young city, you have employees who are just learning what it is to work for a manager-council government, and you have an immense amount of growth pressure with people who want preliminary plats and final plat approvals, and they want vacations of right-of-ways, and they want, you know, the multi-phase developments, and people are trying to figure it out at the same time, and the community isn't sure what they want and what they don't. When I arrive on scene, I am told, oh, Gaucher politics. Oh, it's horrible. It's so bad. We're the worst. We're absolutely the worst. I have to tell you, I have not experienced that. I have been here 5 years, and when I got here, everybody was like, I don't know. I mean, if you got a plan. I mean, I don't know. Everybody was just tired. I thought, we can work with this. I asked people, what do you want? And you know what I heard? I said, what do you want? They said, we want a Taco Bell. I said, I can work with this. Okay. So what we started doing, because morale was where it was, is we needed some quick wins. We wanted to put things on the board to get people engaged, right? And so we had a $6 million grant. We've heard a lot of questions about that $6 million grant. Why didn't you use it to build a water tank or pave roads, for heaven's sake, right? Because your Mississippi Urban Renewal Forum, when you all came together and said, we want an identifiable town center. We want to not be a drive-through community. We want people to know what we stand for and who we are. That is why you received the grant. The grant was to create an identifiable town center. And it says specifically, we want a main street north of the mall. We want that street to tie to bench shelters on Highway 90. It is all right here, your words, then adopted in your comprehensive plan. So with those funds, we could have just put some benches out there. We could have just done some pavers. But the goal here was to get the community's morale up. And so with everything that we did, from the banners on the street signs, those banners were a public art contest, right? Where we had students do the art, didn't we, Miss Ann? And then we had a big auction, and everybody came out that night and bid on that art. And the winning art are the banners that you see every season. Who can tell me who the artist is of this sculpture? No, you don't get to. No. That's Miss Susan Perrell from Gaucher Pride, please.
He's from Fairhope, Alabama. I don't remember his name, but I've met the man.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. This is Dean Mosier's artwork, and you have it in Gaucher, Mississippi. Let me tell you who else has Dean Mosier's artwork. The Smithsonian, the Air and Space Museum, the Naval Academy, the Louvre. Okay? He's kind of a big deal. He is a consultant on Hollywood films, such as The Master and Commander with Russell Crowe, many others, but my husband makes me watch that one a lot. He has a best friend who's in charge of the pyrotechnics in Disney World. And his friend flew out and one evening mechanized the globe that's in the top. 4 times a year, it does a special light show that you won't see at any other time, and that's Memorial Day, July 4th, New Year's, and Christmas. This was given to the city of Gaucher to launch our new slogan as Nature's Playground. It is a commemoration of the resiliency of the Gulf Coast. We also had a Veterans Tribute Tower. We could have put a tower up and called it a day. Clock towers, dime a dozen. But instead, we wanted people to know that we are a veteran community. This is the only Veterans Tribute Tower in the state of Mississippi, and they are connected states, every single state, all the way to Washington, D.C., to identify veteran communities. And you have to qualify. You have to be within a certain distance of your military installations and have a certain veteran population. So this was a 2-day event, the world's only mobile foundry. We made it a big deal. We had a Gator Gala. And I know some of you in this room were at that Gator Gala. We could have put public art out along the highway, but instead, again, we commissioned our artists. Each one of them gave a different example of what it is to live in the city of Gautier. This gator on the right is behind you, and that one's mine, and my kids helped me with that one. But the point is, we had a huge celebration for Gautier's 25th anniversary, and we auctioned these off, and art beget more art because we were able to buy more art for the town center with the proceeds. We were able to land a nationally syndicated show. And let me tell you how we did it. We told American Pickers, we have the largest antique fair on the coast. It's huge. People come from all over. And then we hung up the phone and we made it up. And I don't know if any of y'all were there for it. But it was awesome. And the whole time we're telling, we do this every year, right? And so you see Miss Susan and Miss Ann in the top right with my daughter, Miss Vivian Daly on the left, and that's them filming. Great exposure for the city of Gautier, but the idea is, again, we had so many of you out there with your antiques engaged in that event. And it could have just been they came, they film at the old place, and they leave, but it was about citizens. We have rebranded. You've seen Nature's Playground on our water tanks. You are seeing that at our welcome centers along the interstate, and in everything that we do, we now have a logo in addition to our official city crest. But our logo is letting everyone know that this is a place where you can live and you can work and you can play. It's letting people know about our 400-acre state park, about our Sandhill Crane Refuge, the fact we're surrounded by water on 3 sides, and getting them off the highway. For 2 years, we had World Changers come. Now, we could have just partnered with Gautier Pride and provided grants to seniors for handicap-accessible ramps and re-roofing their homes, but that's not what we did. What we did is we partnered with our neighborhoods, we partnered with our youth and with our churches, and we had community happen for 2 years. In addition to the community development, remember there's 3 prongs, right? Land use, community development, economic development. We have all these balls in the air. We want quick wins. Your plan, as you saw in those pictures straight out of here, describes a cluster industry strategy. You might not have known it at the time, but that's what it was. And it's something that Mayor Galat and the council talk about a lot. A cluster industry strategy is when you have limited resources, as we all do, and so you focus on those things that generate other things to be drawn to it. And I call it the food court phenomenon, right? So when you're in the mall, you don't just have a Chick-fil-A, you have about a dozen other options around them. And so what your plan describes is we're going to focus first and foremost on the waterfront, the town center, and the interstate, and we're going to focus on the type of targeted industries that will draw similar industries around it. And so that's what we did. We also adopted a corridor overlay district. Is anyone in this room aware that you are the only city in the state to have a corridor overlay district? Yeah. Good. That tells me we're right on track with this meeting this evening. So obviously, redevelopment is more expensive than developing new. I think we all know that, right? So your corridor overlay district says that if you are developing or redeveloping within 500 feet of a major or minor arterial in the city of Gautier, and breaking that down, that's Gautier Van Cleve, that's Highway 57, and that's Highway 90, then we will offer you a relaxation of planning standards in exchange for public benefit. I'm going to break that down even further. What that means is if you're Fred's Superstore, have you looked at Fred's and compared it to any other Fred's on the coast? Have you noticed a difference? We're celebrating our successes this evening, right? So our Fred's, you might notice, has more transom windows, is more attractive with a more varied facade than any other Fred's that you see. It also has public art out front because they did not have the room on that site for all the parking that was required. So they were able to look at our code, and there are a menu of options, and they said, okay, I need to reduce my parking, and it says here I can do the following options. So we're going to add more windows, And then they put a local artist to work. Those benches say Nature's Playground and are painted. That is the daughter of the owner of the Flower Patch, who is a professional artist. That's an example of what you can do in our corridor overlay district. Keesler Federal Credit Union also took advantage of this when they built their sidewalk. Retention, recruitment, and redevelopment. Toolkit incentives, Gaucher Business Association. Let me make sure before I get to further, okay, where we're at. So, in 2010 to 2011, within 1 year, we are doing all these community projects. And at the same time, our Planning Commission starts holding neighborhood meetings, and we rezone 1,303 acres. Because when I arrived on site, I was told, Samantha, the name of the game is economic development. And yet, more than a third of the city of Gaucher was zoned agricultural. And again, I thought, we can do something with this. Do you remember those days, David? Yes, a lot going on. And so we met with property owners along our interstate, and they said, well, you know, we knew that one day it would develop, but it's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. We don't see the growth pressures. Do you remember that, David? Yes. David is the chairman of our Planning Commission. And so we rezoned the property in concordance with your comp plan. We did exactly what the plan says to do. And within the first year, B&D Plastics expanded twice. Within 2 years, they had expanded 3 times, and we won a state economic development award because we were in competition with Texas, Louisiana, and Alabama just to be able to keep that homegrown business. We also were able to knock on the door of Bienville Orthopedics, and Kenny Smith was at our meeting yesterday morning representing one of the 45 businesses who were there. And Kenny told the story of how we were able to recruit Bienville Orthopedics by rezoning that high and dry land. We also are the only city in the state of Mississippi to adopt a tax increment financing plan with no developer. I'm going to ask now, and don't feel bad because so far no one has known what I'm talking about. But does anybody in this room know what tax increment financing is? Great. Mr. Bill Finicum does. Susan does. Okay. Well, you don't count. Councilman Adam College says, oh, he knows. So when the city of Gaucher started aggressively looking at economic development in 2010, of course the mall is a big issue, is it not? Because you have Belk's and JCPenney's and Sears, some of whom own their own spot, and yet their retail numbers are bad. And when you have somebody whose overhead is low and their profit is also low, that's not an indicator of a good market for those other types of retailers that you're trying to attract. And so when I called my contacts who specialize in town center development, they told me, Samantha, put a fork in it. It will not happen. Those are not my words. That is what I was told. And I said, why? Because it's not possible without tax increment financing, and the state of Mississippi doesn't do TIF. And so I dug a little further. And if you have read anything about D'Iberville or Gulfport or Biloxi and how they have grown, then you know Mississippi does do TIF. My point is, no one knew that Mississippi does TIF, and Jackson County had never done TIF. Tax increment financing are big words that mean this. Rebate. That's a little lackluster, isn't it? A little underwhelming. That's all it means. It means rebate. It means that if you have a huge project come to your town that's going to require a lot of public infrastructure, they're going to require new traffic lights, new roads, new water, and new sewer, you want that new development, you want that sales tax. But when you see what it's going to mean to your levels of service and your capacity, how are you going to provide for them? What would you do? The only thing you can, you're going to raise taxes on everyone, right? That's the only option that you have. Or you're going to tell them we can't afford it because we don't have it in our budget, and that project's going to leave. And that's why it's the most popular incentive in all 50 states, because this allows you, if you have a developer who has big enough pockets, to say, okay, developer, this is what we're going to do. We're going to enter into an agreement. And after the infrastructure is built and after your project is built and we realize the new sales tax just from your project, we'll rebate you back some of that upfront cost for the public infrastructure.